Our next speaker is Sean Rose. Sean Rose is a product manager at Box. He launched Box Content and the Box View APIs. And he's been building APIs and developer products at Box for over 3 years. And though he's relatively new to the Meteor community, he's already a huge fan of all of you. Here's Sean.
So if you saw the thing that got mailed out about the what my talk was going to be and everything, you noticed that I was going to talk about instant and real-time presentations. So I thought that it might be a travesty if I didn't actually use my own app to do this presentation. So I'm actually going to use this live and actually give you the opportunity to see how it works kind of at your computers and everything. So there's kind of a token Bill O'Reilly line that goes here. There's kids here, so I'll let you figure it out yourself. But so anyway, the way this app works is you kind of get this really simple home screen, and you get this option to share a presentation. So I'm using filepicker.io to do the presentations and stuff. And so as Jade mentioned, I worked at Box, so I'm not going to show you all the super confidential things that are in my Box account, because not getting fired is one of my top priorities. So I'm going to pull this out of my Dropbox account, which is slightly less secure. With respect to all the confidential stuff I have, because none of it's stored in there. But so as soon as you upload a document to here, lots of crazy magic is going on behind the scenes, and we're actually converting it to HTML, and I'll kind of go into the details about that. But so once you kind of get this in place, you get this link that you can share with people. And so I'm going to get you guys the actual real experience, and I'm going to actually tweet this link out so that you can actually go and see. Looks like lots of people are talking to Mark Andreessen. OK. So if you go and follow, look at where I am on Twitter. So if I go to right here, so we'll just see in just a second. So this is my Twitter handle. So if you go here right now, you'll see the actual link I just tweeted out, unless Twitter's down, which happens sometimes. So if you open that up, you can do it on either your laptop or your phone. I actually built this to work kind of responsibly. But as soon as you have that up, you can actually see kind of the gist of kind of what's going on here. So yeah, people at home also, I think there might be a slight delay on the stream, but this will look kind of cool anyway. So anyway, the app that I built, again, like I said before, it's called Broadcast, and I call it the fastest way to share a presentation in real time on the web. And so to do a little bit of background on me, as Jade said, I work at Box. How many people have heard of Box, or at least know what Box does in some semblance? OK, good. Marketing's doing their job. So we have this basic vision of kind of letting people share, manage, and access their content from any device and anywhere. We're used by over 99% of the Fortune 500 in companies like Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Netflix, so on and so forth. Most major companies, probably use us. And while you'll probably be familiar with kind of the web and mobile and desktop apps that we build, a pretty big component of what we do is our platform and all sorts of developer products that we build to enable developers to get into all the enterprises that we work with. So the particular product that I'm working on now is this thing called the Box View API. And the way that this works, basically, in a nutshell, is we take desktop files like Office and PDF documents, do some crazy magic, kind of like what just happened here, and turn them into HTML5 that you can work with in a normal web or mobile application. So taking these kind of cruddy like Office documents and turning them into HTML, CSS, SVG fonts, and the normal things you're used to working with on the web and everything. And so I'll come back to kind of where the technology comes into how I built this app in a minute. But to kind of get started with, I want to tell you kind of the problem I set out to solve with this, because, well, this is kind of cool. There's actually a specific need I had. So as Jade said, I'm a product manager. So a lot of my life is basically Dilbert. I'm kind of doing presentations and graphs and stuff a lot of the time. And while I do make fun of myself for that, like a lot of the purpose behind this is being able to communicate information about how we're doing, data, all this sort of stuff to people in a really fast, and informal, and exploratory manner. Just like that's kind of my central role and everything like that. And with the way that Box is now, we actually have multiple offices across Los Altos, San Francisco, off the map in Japan, in another place in London, and in a few other places, hopefully in the future. And it kind of makes this exercise of kind of getting this really fast exchange of information in like a presentation form really difficult. And so, there are kind of existing applications and everything that I've tried to use. So you've all probably used like Join.me or WebEx or Google Hangouts and so on and so forth. And I've tried to use these with people all the time, and every single time I go to like contact them, there's always this issue of you haven't installed this plugin yet, or you need to download this software, it doesn't work with your browser, there's something wrong with your firewall. Like there's always some problem every time I try to do something with somebody when I call them over this. So it's really frustrating because it wastes 3 to 5 minutes of like everyone's time every single time. Like compounded, it ends up being hours, and if you're doing a big person meeting, it ends up being many, many hours. And so on the other end, I'm trying to do something, and it just feels like the other person just like has absolutely no idea what they're doing. Like it's really, really frustrating. So when I think about, I want to be able to exchange information really fast in an informal manner, the tools that I have available to me really don't accomplish that. What ends up happening is everything becomes really slow, really complicated, and really frustrating. And that's the complete opposite of what I want. And so the problem that I think that I needed to solve was to kind of remove this barrier of having these weird plugins and software that you need to download and just completely idiot-proofing the entire process so that even this puppy at this Windows laptop can see my presentation. And so, at Box and, kind of my background in design and everything, we have this concept of a bias towards action. So when you see a problem like this in the company, we're very much encouraged to go out and just try to fix it. Some people do it through operational processes. Some people do it through software. I chose the latter. And so we can kind of, I was trying to figure out how I was going to solve this problem. And as you can see, I generate huge engagement on my Twitter account. I got a whole 2 responses. But both of them were very confidently saying I should use Meteor to build this next project. And so, since I'm very easily swayed, I took their advice and went with it. So I kind of had this concept, I'm going to build this app with Meteor, and it's going to be really cool. I'm going to solve this really big problem that a lot of people have in our company and everything like that. And I started telling everyone, I was like, man, this is going to be so cool. Everybody's going to use this. This app I'm building is great. And the problem is, or maybe not the problem, is that in a month and a half, we were putting on this really big developer conference called Box Dev, which is basically our equivalent of WWDC or Google I/O. We have 1,000+ developers attend and everything. And I got the attention of the people at my company that are putting on the event. And they're like, yeah, you're using our technology to build a really cool app that solves a real problem. You should totally present about it at our conference and everything. And I just kind of looked at that opportunity as it was and was like, yeah, that sounds great, and totally signed up for it. The problem was that I literally had done nothing to actually build the app yet. So it was 5 weeks away. I had literally read nothing about Meteor, written 0 lines of code, and committed to presenting about this app that I had not even built yet in 5 weeks. So needless to say, I was not feeling very good about myself. And the other problem is, as a product manager, I'm not coding during the day most of the time. This would have to be something I do kind of part-time and everything. So while I'm spending most of my time doing presentations and stuff like that, I would have to do this kind of in my couple of hours of spare time and everything. So to go from this kind of really bad situation to this epic conference we're having, I had all 5 weeks to go from 0 to something, which was a bit of a daunting task. So the first 2 weeks, I literally was terrified. I didn't know what was actually going to happen. But fortunately, I stumbled upon something that kind of just fell from heaven, which is this book. And so Discover Meteor literally saved me very, very greatly. It explained everything in detail about how Meteor works, how to build an app. And like every single bit of information I could have possibly imagined I needed to build an app was included in there. And I was able to burn through the entire thing like, in a couple of nights and everything. It was really well written. So kudos to the guys that wrote that. That was really useful. And so I built kind of the, demo project app that you do, kind of the Hacker News clone, microscope or whatever. So knocked all that out in 2 weeks. I was starting to feel a little bit better about myself. Still pretty horrible, but a little bit better. And so in the remaining 3 weeks that I had up until the conference, I actually started building the app. And so I apologize for the inception here. This is the app that I'm presenting from right now, and this is a screenshot of the app. But so anyway, so how this actually works, it ended up being very simple. There's a little under 700 lines of code, and most of the heavy lifting is done by Meteor and the View API that I build and kind of maintain at Box. So to kind of go through what happens, if you remember in the beginning, there was this point where I chose my presentation and everything. All that's really going on here is that user is picking a file, and I send it on the back end to the Box View API. And we're the normal RESTful API. It's really, really basic HTTP requests. So using the kind of prepackaged HTTP library, this was super easy to do. And again, so once I upload to the View API, I'm creating kind of this object in the database that kind of keeps a clone of all the state that I'm getting from the View API itself. And so after that, you get this kind of loading progress indicator thing. And that's when all the magic, crazy stuff is happening on the Box View API side. And so it happens asynchronously. And once the conversion is complete, the Box View API sends a webhook to my app that says, the conversion is done now. You can show the document to somebody. And as you saw before, it only took a couple of seconds. It's really, really fast. And the way this works is, again, super easy. I receive the HTTP request, and I just update that entry in the database that I just created previously with the actual loading information. And so on the other side of this, I get this link that I can give to people that are viewing, which is what I tweeted out and gave to you guys. And then I have my own link that I'm presenting from that gives me control. So what you guys didn't really see is the only main UI difference is that there are arrows to change the actual presentation slides and everything. But the way this works, again, is really, really super simple. It's just kind of with the permissioning system that Meteor provides with the subscription. So when the presenter updates the page, it gets updated in the database. And when that happens, it gets pushed to the viewer. It's really, really simple. And this is just a product of how Meteor is kind of built. It was really easy to do this. And so when I change a page as a presenter, I'm basically waiting for the event from my viewer and just updating the page in the database from that same object I created earlier. And so when the viewer sees the page change, which is what you guys see when the page is changing, I just have this kind of depths auto run block where it's watching for changes in the page in the database. And then it calls the JavaScript function I have to update the pages and everything. So really, really simple. And again, a lot of the other heavy lifting was done by all these really amazing packages that kind of made everything super easy. Like if I had to figure out how to do routing and stuff by myself, I totally would have been screwed. But fortunately, I had help from all these different things to do this really, really quickly, in a span of 3 weeks or whatever. And so I would like to say that that is the end of the story. Unfortunately, it was not. Because so I got to our conference and everything and had the app pretty much mostly built. And I was getting ready to go on stage, was getting mic'd up kind of like I was over there, when I just had just a super, super deep twist in my stomach. And I realized there was a really horrible bug in the app that would basically, anytime a viewer would open up the presentation, it would reset the pages back to 1, which obviously, if I'm giving a presentation to hundreds of people, that's liable to happen. So I literally dropped onto the floor with my laptop and fixed the change, didn't test it, well, manually tested it, but didn't formally test it, and deployed the change using kind of the one-line Meteor deploying everything. And the whole thing got fixed in a matter of like less than a minute with the code change I had to do in the deployment. And that was just really enabled by this really super fast, super easy Meteor deployment process and everything. And so even with all that crazy stuff that kind of happened, like these little really tiny developer experience things that Meteor takes a great pain to make sure they get right, like one-line deployment, actually saved me at the last minute, literally the last minute. So when Jade said that I'm a huge fan already, there's blood that was almost shed because of that. So so yeah. I had, this app is completely fully built and everything. I open sourced it. It's deployed to meteor.com, as you guys can probably see, because you have the link and everything. But, you can take a look at like how it works and everything, as well as how it works with our API and everything. But yeah, I just wanted to say, thanks to the Meteor folks for having me out here. And then also, yeah, this has been a really great experience. And, in that kind of 5-week span, you've got like a lifetime fan already. So thanks.
Questions from the audience? Oh, back there.
So a very, very minor thing. It might be really cool if you could integrate a URL shortener into the app. So that would be like really cool.
Yeah, so the question was, or suggestion was more that it'd be cool if I integrated a URL shortener. I totally thought about doing that. It was just lazy. So you can create an issue on the GitHub repo, and I'll get to it. I'll get to it, but take note of the suggestion. There's another question. Yep.
Do you use Box like this internally at Box, or is this just your public project?
Yeah, so I mean, this was created for a problem I was having. Sorry to repeat the question. So is this used at Box in any capacity, or is this just kind of like a side thing? Now, the answer is it actually is used at Box because, like I said, we're kind of distributed in many cases. And after I built this, obviously I told everyone about it before it existed. So you can imagine what happened after it actually did exist. So yeah, I mean, we use this especially in kind of really big meetings where there are like 30 or 40 people. Like it's really hard to coordinate all these kind of gummy kind of other apps and everything. And so it ends up working really, really well. And like, if you think about this in context of usage, like it was really fast for me to get that set up. So it actually ends up being useful, which is surprising to me, but I guess it worked out. Question right here with the hat.
Yeah, would you consider moving to like a production server?
You mean like moving to like EC2 or something, or? Yeah, so the question was, would I consider moving to a production server such as EC2 or something? I would consider it. I think the only thing is it doesn't, like, I'm not like actively promoting this to the world, so, and I guess secret's out now, but, so yeah, now maybe I do have to think about that, but for right now, when we're only using it internally, I think Meteor.com has been sufficient, but yeah, it's actually probably something worth considering now, because like you saw, the actual kind of conference and stuff we had was at the end of March, and I've been actively maintaining it and enhancing it and stuff since then, so probably a good idea just for people using it. So you had red shirt next.
Yeah, have you played with maybe having like a presenter view for the people so that if like you like go too fast through a slide, they can kind of go back and then maybe catch up with you later?
Question was like having like kind of controls or presenter view for people that are viewing and stuff like that. Yeah, I've thought about it. Yeah, I have thought about it. I just haven't done anything around that yet. But I totally get it. I think like if you think about the kind of usage, if like somebody calls you on the phone and like you're just looking at this with them, like usually you'll be kind of in sync anyway. So most of the time we've kind of had feedback to the presenter to slow down if that was happening. Although obviously you guys didn't have the opportunity to talk if I was going too fast. But good point though. Right there.
Would it be useful to add the audio stream as well, so you could skip the trying to get everybody on the same call or something like that?
Yeah, question was, would it be useful to add an audio stream or something like that so it didn't have to have the step of like a call or something? Yeah, definitely. That's something I'm looking at. So I'm thinking maybe doing something with like WebRTC or something to like just have this kind of all-in-one, really simple, I don't know what you call like conference calling type thing. that only takes 2 seconds to set up and just uses the web, and you don't have to worry about plugins and stuff like that. It's something I'm looking at right now. I don't have a ton of experience with WebRTC or anything like that, but I obviously have a willingness to learn crazy things in crazy amounts of time. So it's something I'm definitely looking at because I don't like phone calls anyway. Up front.
So this is a story question, not a technical question.
Yeah.
So the story seems to be over. You
Yeah.
presented at this conference.
Uh-huh.
Did anything come out of that? Like, did your job change in any way? Is it just like another day at Box now that you've done this?
Why would it have changed? So I guess the question was kind of as a result of kind of presenting this and everything and our conference and everything, has anything changed in kind of my day-to-day at work and everything? Answer is probably no, but that's kind of, so you're asking a relative question, and I have a pretty crazy life at Box normally, so I think that's probably the thing that prevents that from being a yes. But yeah, I'm generally always kind of working on kind of random side projects and stuff like that here anyway, so we kind of get encouraged to think about crazy things whenever possible, so not too much has changed, to be honest. But any other questions?
One back there.
Yep.
Hey, can you tell us a little bit about how Box converts PDFs to HTML5?
So the question was, can you tell us more about how Box converts PDFs to HTML5? So right now, most of that is kind of proprietary, unfortunately. But if you look at, you can kind of examine the, I don't know, pop-up inspector or whatever, but you can look at kind of how we output things. And so the kind of main pillars we use are SVG and just basic HTML. So all the images and colors and fills and stuff in here are all done with SVG. And that's both because it's super light payload and scales very well on, say, like Retina devices and stuff like that. So the exact kind of things we do in there are pretty crazy, but those are just some of the components. If you want to work with us, I'm hiring for my team, but and I can tell you more after that point.
Last question.
Who had their hand first?
I don't know.
It's umpire pick. Okay.
So you talked about going from PDF to HTML5. Do you also have like PDF generation from HTML?
Not from HTML to PDF, but for anything that goes, so obviously the PDF that goes through there, we can create a PDF version of that because it was a PDF to begin with. But for the Office documents and stuff that go through there, we can also create a PDF for that. We don't quite have it kind of generically built out to do any HTML to PDF, but it is something that we are kind of thinking about and looking at. And the primary reason for that is, has anybody here ever had to implement printing in a website? Not a fun time, right? So a lot of kind of hacks around that involve kind of creating an intermediary PDF or something like that and kind of allowing the browser's kind of native viewer to be the kind of facilitator for printing. So for purposes like that, it's something we might look into, but not specifically available today.
All right.
Is that it?
Cool.
I think
Thank you,
that's all the
Sean.
questions. Yeah. Thank you.